and I'm a fan of that. I think this could really be a movement in the right direction for items, for players that want a bit more guidance, and that's
On
sort of
the
like,
website
oh,
IndiaTVNews.com, it
Google,
states,
relax.
according to
Um,
Vastu Shastra, it is
something
considered appropriate to place the idol and picture of any goddess and deity on the wall on the east or north side of the house of worship.
I don't even know how I triggered that. I'll have to edit that. Greetings, everybody. This is Leviathan here, and whoa, we've got juicy bits here today. We have the last quarterly update for Diablo 4 for 2020. It almost sounded like there would never be another quarterly update again. So this is it for 2020. We knew we would get four. This is the fourth one. Last one had to do with the skill trees. I'll put a link to that one in the video description. I didn't do a video on it, but it's at least worth looking at because they do mention it here again and some changes to it. But this is all about items today. This is a really exciting one because, as they note in kind of the intro here, items are the lifeblood of Diablo games. Like, it is super important in an RPG to have items that are exciting, really provide that chase. They are the things that you want to, post to your friends and be like, look at this sick item I got. So it's really very important that they nail this. And I like a lot of what I see here. A link to this particular blog will be in the video description as well. I'll just kind of give you some of the highlights of it and a little bit of my thoughts. And then, I would love to hear from you guys in the comments section as to what you think as far as the direction of Diablo 4, if you like some of these changes, what else you'd like to see. So without further ado, let's jump in a bit. They just mentioned that, they're making some good progress, trying to get some stuff in before the holiday season hits. This blog is all about itemization, super important. They are the lifeblood, as mentioned, major part of what makes Diablo so compelling. So they want to get it right. There've been a lot of changes to it, iterations since BlizzCon 2019, and they actually mentioned here they knew that there would be a whole bunch of iteration from last BlizzCon to follow-up blogs, and obviously when the game actually releases. So we should still, even after this, plan to see more change and other things that'll happen with items. Hopefully always going in the right direction, right? As we give feedback and see what they're up to. And hopefully get our hands on them soon. Oh, gosh. Can't wait to play. So, what's also important to note here, for those that haven't been keeping up, is that it was kind of sleuthed out that David Kim is no longer on Diablo 4, and he kind of was the items guy previously. Not sure what that says or means in terms of, where we're going with who's doing what exactly. Could just be that he was needed for World of Warcraft, and so they grabbed him. Maybe he'll come back, who knows, but it is worth noting that this blog is giving credit to Joe Shelley as the person that's walking us through all these changes and such. So just something to kind of keep in mind as we keep tabs on every little aspect of what's happening with Diablo 4. You know, there's social media links to Twitter, so that is what it is. And then they mentioned BlizzConline. That is where the next update will come for Diablo 4. So as you guys know, that's the replacement for BlizzCon from this year that didn't happen in November. It's going to be scheduled for the middle of February. I believe 19th to 20th, and I will definitely put a link to that in the video description just in case I'm wrong, get the right dates there. But yeah, so that's going to be in February, so that'll be the kind of next juicy update. And the tease here, by the way, without spoiling the surprise, let's just say it involves a new version of the campfire scene we showed you last BlizzCon. That's got to be a class reveal, right? Like, let's be, like, come on. The campfire, that's where that iconic beginning of the game is, where we see which character you're going to pick, which class you're going with. It's got to be a class reveal. So I'm stoked for that because please, let us get some bow and arrow action. I need it. Please, please, please. We'll see. So that was it from Lewis. And then we're on to Joe Shelley's updates. But before we jump into items, he mentioned skill tree stuff. And just wants to let us know that as far as what they're doing with items, they want these three pillars to kind of stand out. Strengthening the class identity by providing some intuitive fantasy hooks. And items and skills lean into the fantasy for class. Support deep customization through itemization. They should support and enhance your class, but not define it. And I think that's sort of a callback to D3 and how really without items, you don't do any damage, significant damage, or anything at all. So it's sort of moving away from that in items being the end all be all. And instead, mattering and kind of emboldening the fantasy of the class and what you want to do with whatever build you're making. enabling it, but not, making it make or break, which is, I think, a good change in my opinion. I feel like stuff should be important when it comes to items in terms of like things you're seeking and how they kind of add to your build, but you shouldn't need a specific item to like make your build work, because then I just feel like that limits you in so many capacities. And then last but not least, they said they're looking for depth, and this is kind of interesting, between Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. We want to provide you years of things to discover and countless ways to build a class. So this one I feel like will maybe be a little controversial between D2 D3. I think most people would say that D3 is certainly more accessible and not nearly as deep as they might like in their ARPG. And then D2 certainly, as it grew with the patches and like the synergies and rune words, just all these different layers, it definitely became a bit more fun to build around. So I guess aiming between those two should be good. I just hope maybe that they lean a little more in the D2 direction. I personally will just love the most depth, right? Like when they say years, I want you to actually really hit that. Like I want to be thinking about new ideas and stuff, like after mastering the game and feeling like I've mastered it, and then just turn it on its head, So I guess we'll hope to see if they can achieve that, or hopefully lean in a direction that's going to be really nice for some of us longer term ARPG players. So the skill tree stuff, as mentioned, that was the last blog, the third quarter of the year blog. Kind of saw mostly, I would say, less than favorable reviews on it, mainly because it didn't seem like enough. People thought that there should have been like, a skill tree for every skill, and, just bigger, more is what I kind of saw. I think it was a step in the right direction, at least from what we had previously seen, where people are kind of calling it a skill twig. They're asking like, are we actually going to get to a tree, a huge tree? And then they literally put the skills on a tree. They put the passives and stuff on a tree. We'll see. They mentioned here that they've had some internal playtesting and extended progression playtesting, and they think that it's a solid direction, and they're just going to iterate on it and make further improvements. One example here is that they're increasing the clustering of related skill nodes so that players don't have to go across the tree to find skill upgrades for their builds. So I guess it's going to be more concentrated in order for you to build around, a specific like meteor or, skill or whatever have you. I think we'll have to wait and see on this one. I would like to visually see it more and have it really feel significant. Because one of the things that they also mentioned here is the choice, the matter of choice, and how players really want to subscribe to a certain build, right? And have it not be that you can get everything, but have meaningful choice, right? And I think that's something that's going to feel super important to players, because they want their characters to be different from other people's characters, and want their builds to feel like I made the conscious choice to move in this direction, not just like the illusion of choice, if you will. Here they mentioned specifically respecs, and it sounds like they're basically doing it like other games do it, like Last Epoch and Path of Exile, where basically like you're going to be allowed to respec and there's no limitation to it, but you will have to pay some kind of cost for it. And therefore, as you invest deeper into your build, it will cost you more to respec or remove choices that you've made. So you kind of have to either commit or pay the price, right? Or maybe even just start over if it's too costly to make those changes. And I think that's good, because that at least allows you to make you feel like, hey, if I choose this, I got to make sure I'm really going down this road. Otherwise, I got to plan for, pulling these ones out, moving back into this direction, stuff like that. So I think that's good. I don't see how that could really be all that bad. Just in case you didn't want to build a new character, you at least have the option to change it, but you will have to pay that price. Next, they wanted to also talk about primary stats before they dove into items, and they got rid of the whole angelic power and demonic power stuff. They didn't like, or they felt like it didn't reinforce the fantasy of what being a barbarian or a sorcerer or a druid is, and so they went back and they basically brought back what you have in D2, which is, adding in, oh, this doesn't get bigger. Adding in regular stats, so strength, intelligence, willpower, dexterity. So, spending points again on these attributes. What's more interesting in this time is that they do different things based on which class you're on. So they have sort of their kind of standard of what they give you, but then based on your class, they'll actually provide different benefits, which I think is pretty interesting. So for instance here, you can see This is for a barbarian, so strength is going to give, obviously barbarian strength, like that's going to be the main stat that you pump. And then you can get some intelligence. The willpower one seems to be the most interesting one because it has to do with like resources and stuff. But you can see willpower here on a barbarian gives you increased resource generation and healing. But here on a wizard or sorceress, you get critical strike chance and healing. So it's kind of cool. And then here on, oh, look at this. So they kind of just swapped it around. So then here for dexterity, you get critical strike chance and a chance to dodge. And then here you get the resource generation and a chance to dodge. So I guess they make it so that it's not always like just pump these and you'll get these benefits, but you'll have to, depending on which class you're playing, make some choices here. So I guess that's particularly interesting. The thing that I found to be the good use of this system is that they're also adding the attributes into like secondary unlocks for your skills, basically. So if you feel like as a player you might get kind of lost in like, should I wait and save and add like 5 more points to strength, or like what am I building these towards, right? Like I felt that was the case in a lot of D2. You were mainly trying to get your attributes around gear requirements, and then once you met those, it was just like pump everything else into vitality. But at least here you'll have skills to consider, and they have some images here of like these upgrades, right? So if you want a big whirlwind upgrade here to no longer slow your barbarian's movement speed while active and then gain something else, you would want this 150 dexterity. So that gives you a target to aim towards, which I think is an interesting way to incorporate attributes being meaningful beyond just, I want more strength, therefore I get more strength, right? Like this, even though dexterity usually isn't something you want a lot of as a strength class, this will actually motivate you to get it if you want to go down this whirlwind road. If you wanted to go here, you actually need a lot of strength and a lot of dexterity, and then you'll get extra benefit. So to me, that's pretty cool. I think that's an interesting way to go about it. You have another example here for the sorceress, getting more willpower here to upgrade your ice blades, stuff like that. So I like that. I think that that is an interesting choice because it makes it just more interesting than, this main stat because I am X class. So that is sort of a walkthrough of that. And again, I'm not going to go into super duper detail on every single thing. Definitely want you to pop up the blog and read it because there's some interesting details in there too. But I'll at least give you some of the most awesome highlights that I saw. So they go on now. We're actually going to talk about items, and they're doing some work here to just make them more visually interesting with what item you're using and how it like portrays effects in the ground and stuff. So a little more lifelikeness to utilizing these things. This it seems obvious. They wanted to say like basically wands and staffs and swords and maces should all do different things. I'm like, yes, that makes sense, right? And you kind of see these in other games already, like Last Epoch and PoE and stuff. They have these implicits like that make it so if you have a scepter, you kind of expect a certain implicit benefit from using a scepter versus going to a mace or a staff or whatever. And one thing that I kind of already don't like, or hope to see changed at least, is that this isn't specific. So they're mentioning here that they want us to understand that one weapon might be slower than another and one could be faster. And this is the designation they've given them, just very fast weapon or slow weapon. Unless there's not going to be attack speed modifiers in this game, I think we want to know these values, right? So I would rather have them say, this is 1 attack per second, and this is, 1.5 attacks per second, because that's already in like most ARPGs and D3. So I don't see why they would go away from that. I think we always want, at least for me anyways, to err on the side of more information rather than less, and have players be able to work with these numbers. So I just hope that that becomes actual values, because it's kind of weird to just be like, I have a fast weapon, I have a slow weapon, and maybe I can make it faster or slower, or like, I imagine there's got to be attack speed in the game. So all right, in any case though, here's an example. They're like, see, you're really slow but more powerful when you have a two-hander, and well, look at that, you're casting hella fast on a one-hander. So that's cool. And this is the whole thing about implicits as well, how shields will always have block value. These wands will always have critical strike chance inherent to them. And then for these axes, they'll always have bleed inherent in them. So anything above these lines, like this one line is kind of the separator, and then these are kind of like the implicits or the inherent values in the actual type of whatever thing it is that you're looking at. So a shield, a wand, an axe. It's pretty standard. I mean, I'm glad that it's in the game, I suppose, because it just makes for more depth, more choice. Our choices will matter. And then next is kind of talking about item quality, and this is pretty cool. So they're gonna make it so that it's not just always about get to the legendary, right? Like, we want there to be choices between like a character that might equip, you know, one magic item and a couple rares and some legendaries. So I think that's good because it shouldn't always just like there should be progression in terms of like, yes, I understand I picked this up. Eventually this is better than that. Eventually this is better than that in terms of these tiers. But I think if there's interesting decisions to be made too within like min-maxing or trying to put a build together that requires very specific thresholds of like, you know, percentage chance to immobilize or whatever, right? And maybe you could build around some of these things. Then it's cool that you could aim for something that might seem like a downgrade, but ultimately could work perfectly for your build. I think that's something that would make gearing very interesting. And so here you can see that one of the things they're changing now is that magic items will have these very large amounts, obviously limited affixes, but large amounts of the affixes they particularly come with. So you can see here it has a way higher chance to immobilize versus the affix that you're seeing on a rare here. I don't know, I wish we could see like what the like heights of the tiers are, you know, like if this 16.8% is maxed out versus this 11%, like is it a high roll, a low roll, is there a range, stuff like that. And one thing that they're changing, which seems crazy, and I don't exactly know how I feel about it yet, is that legendary affixes will randomly roll on legendary items. So that basically means, like, right, if you have 5 legendaries, they could all have the same legendary affix. It's very different from how it works in D3 right now, which is like if you wanted, you know, the Yang's recurve, you're getting it because it has resource cost reduction as an inherent thing in it, and also the legendary power that empowers multi-shot. But the way that this system is set up to work, you could actually get that multi-shot legendary affix, assuming it, like, you know, was in this game for some reason, on like boots. That seems pretty crazy. Like, I like it because it definitely allows us to free up slots. Like, you don't have to think in with like gearing in mind of like, okay, I always have this power, always have this item in this slot because I need that power. If the powers are really important to you, you can get them anywhere, and that means like tons of gearing choices. It definitely seems pretty crazy. It seems hard to balance, but I like it. I think I like it. I think it makes things interesting for sure. So they give an example of that here, where you can see, yeah, there's some boots, and they have this effect, but what do you know? Here's a chest, and it also has the same effect. And, you know, same thing here. Here are some boots, but what do you know? Also on this amulet, they got the same thing going too. So, like, you know, maybe your amulet slot is kind of a bit freer, so you might go for this here, and then you really have a certain pair of boots that you want, and you got to go for, you know, freeing up this power because you really like it. So have it on the amulet, and then boom, your boot slot is free again. That's quite a market change. I'll be curious to see how everyone responds to that one. That's very interesting to me. And one thing that they noted here is that attack and defense are still things. They are still things in this game, which has kind of come under fire previously because it's like too simplistic. But they're still in there. And attack is mainly going to come from weapons, and your defense from armor. So just something that hasn't gone away, just making note of. However, one thing that I think kind of enabled from this system of the legendary affixes being able to kind of slot more freely is that they're having these uniques, and it's actually a return to D2, which is great because these uniques will be specific. They're always what they are. So that means that they will always come with these affixes, maybe some ranges on these affixes, but you can count on these to be exactly what they are. So actually uniques. Which is cool because I imagine now the gearing will be like, there might be a couple uniques that you really want to find because they'll be interesting for your build. And then, oh shoot, this unique overlaps with a power that I currently use on my boots or on my pants. Guess what? Just, you know, keep trying to get those legendaries until you get that same effect on a different legendary. Boom, move it off the pants. Now you can wear your Kilt of the Plague Bringer. So pretty interesting. I'm glad that they're returning these because I feel like uniques add a lot of flavor. The users are very class specific, very fantasy driven. And I think that uniques just, I loved them in D2, so I'm glad that we're getting them back in D4 as well. So there's definitely a little bit of synergy going on here. I'll be curious to see exactly how it all works out. And obviously it's still kind of early, you know, this could change as well too, but I kind of like this direction. I think it works well. And then they do make a recall, a mention to mythic items, which is supposed to be like another tier above all this. And they didn't want to create an item quality that would just invalidate all the others. So these are out for now. And then one of the things that they loved most about it was the promise of just getting these random legendary powers on an item. So that was what sort of drove them to fold that into how the existing legendaries work. Because if you recall previously, if I remember, mythics were basically like this conglomeration of legendary powers, and they were random, so you could actually get some, you know, interesting combinations of them. And now that's kind of enfolded into how legendaries work. So that's basically all there is in this blog post. I say basically all there is. There's quite a bit. Definitely some things to chew over. It mentions that, you know, now we have skills, passive trees, primary stat points, changes to items. This will all be things that you can toggle and screw and mess around with to make builds. And so we have all these different levers that we're going to be able to pull as players. And I imagine maybe even more systems on top of this too, that give essentially the whole gamut of what is player power, character power in the game. And you could focus on some skills that get augmented by uniques, maybe something from scratch out of the different legendary fixes, or have just a creative pairing of primary stats with specific skills, and the odd, rare, or magic item that will maximize a specific fix. So that's kind of that idea that we've been talking about throughout the majority of this blog post. It's like the ability to really mix and match and have sort of a system that allows for players to imagine essentially whatever they want. So anyways, they're asking for feedback on this. We have, you know, lots of time now, I guess, with the holidays coming up and such. So definitely hop into the comments. I want to hear what you guys think about all these different changes to items, and where the excitement is, where the trepidation is, what you'd like to see as we continue forward. And look to BlizzConline. Like we already know now, there's a guarantee of Diablo 4 at BlizzConline, so that's exciting. I think a new class is coming. So I'll catch you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to check out the stream. Don't forget to check out all the links in the video description. We'll be back with more. Subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you in the next video. Adios for now.